Hey guys, tonight we drift into the life of Nikola Tesla, the restless inventor whose name still hums in the background every time you plug in your phone charger. Imagine yourself in a quiet Croatian village in the mid-19th century, the smell of wood smoke hanging in the evening air, church bells tolling somewhere in the hills. You're barefoot on cobbled stones, squinting at a wiry boy who insists that the crackling sky above is full of secrets. You probably wouldn't survive this childhood, by the way. Too much mud, too many sharp tools lying around, and zero hand sanitizer. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from, say, your bed in Chicago, or a hammock in Manila, or even a cramped dorm room in Berlin, let me know your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing where in the world people are nodding off to these ramblings. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin in 1856, in the village of Smiljan, part of the Austrian Empire at the time, though modern maps pin it in Croatia. The night of Tesla's birth is wrapped in lore. A thunderstorm rattling the house, lightning flaring through wooden shutters. According to family memory, the midwife muttered, "This child will be of the light, or of the darkness." Tesla's mother, probably exhausted beyond caring, chose of the light. Historians still argue whether that story is charming myth or embroidered memory, but it clings to his legend like static electricity to a wool sweater. As you watch the boy grow, you notice he's the sort of child who turns ordinary chores into small science experiments. He peers at water wheels, flicks insects into candle flames just to study the flight patterns, and once tries to harness June bugs as living propellers for a makeshift windmill. Quirky, yes, but also messy. The contraption doesn't work, but his neighbors remember the insect swarm for days. His family's house is filled with both discipline and creativity. His father, Milutin, is an Orthodox priest with a commanding voice, given to long sermons and stern looks. His mother, Georgina, nicknamed Duca, cannot read or write, yet she designs ingenious household tools, weaving patterns and mechanical gadgets from memory. Tesla later insists that whatever spark of invention runs through him comes not from his father's library, but from his mother's clever hands. You sit at the dinner table, candlelight flickering. Tesla, still a boy, is challenged to recite epic poems in multiple languages. He does so with a flourish, as if already performing for an unseen audience. His memory is startling. He can recall pages verbatim. Mainstream historians agree that Tesla's photographic recall was genuine, though some whisper that later in life he might have exaggerated it. Either way, it meant he rarely bothered with note-taking. Why jot things down when your mind can replay entire diagrams like a slide projector? At night, the boy lies awake, staring at beams of moonlight slicing through cracks in the wooden shutters. He claims to see visions, sometimes objects glowing in the air, sometimes bursts of color triggered by everyday sounds. These hallucination-like experiences trouble him, but also feed his imagination. Was it a neurological condition? Historians still argue whether Tesla's visions were signs of synesthesia, migraines, or some undiscovered peculiarity of his nervous system. Whatever the cause, you can imagine how difficult it would be trying to fall asleep while luminous gears spin behind your eyelids. You think insomnia's bad now? Try being haunted by floating blueprints. The landscape of Smiljan shapes him too. Mountains roll away into mist, streams chatter across stones, and thunderstorms sweep in without warning. You're trudging down a dirt lane beside him when a lightning bolt splits a tree not 30 paces away. Tesla freezes, pupils dilated, heart racing, not with fear but fascination. He begins sketching arcs of light in the air, whispering that someday he'll understand the hidden language of storms. You, meanwhile, are thinking about how fast you'd have sprinted home if you were him. Even as a child, he's obsessed with the invisible. He builds a toy turbine from scraps, convinced he can make water itself do useful work. He crafts early contraptions out of twigs and wires, often startling livestock in the process. One sheep reportedly bolted through a fence after he attached a rudimentary belt drive too close to its grazing spot. The humor here is gentle, but you can almost see the young Tesla apologizing to the bewildered animal while pocketing the lesson about torque and vibration. The boy's health, however, is fragile. He's prone to fevers, sometimes so intense he drifts into delirium. During one long illness, he devours every book he can lay hands on, traveling in imagination through scientific adventures and epic novels. At one point, he becomes so engrossed in Mark Twain's early travel writing that he claims Twain's stories actually helped him recover. Decades later, Tesla and Twain meet, and Tesla thanks him directly, an encounter that makes the old humorist blush with delight. Quirky, improbable, but confirmed. They really were friends. Childhood also brings him brushes with death. Once, he tumbles into a river and nearly drowns before friends pull him out by the hair. Another time, he leaps from a barn roof, clutching an umbrella, convinced it will act as a parachute. You probably wouldn't survive that either. Umbrellas are not parachutes, but Tesla limps away with only bruises and another idea etched into memory. He begins telling anyone who will listen that controlled flight will one day be possible. You can sense the seeds of obsession already planted. A child scribbling in dust with a stick, muttering about harnessing unseen forces, isn't unusual. But this boy refuses to let the thought drift away. He keeps returning, eyes lit with something fiercer than play. The villagers shake their heads, call him peculiar, and send their children indoors. You, meanwhile, hover nearby, wondering how much of this restless energy will burn him out before it ever lights up the world. The evening deepens over Smiljan. Frogs croak by the stream, the smell of damp hay rises from barns, and the stars scatter across the sky like forgotten sparks. Tesla stands beneath them, a thin silhouette, whispering to himself that the universe is full of patterns, if only he can listen closely enough. You feel the hush settle, as if even the crickets pause to hear his vow. You follow the boy into a household shadowed by both brilliance and grief. Nikola grows up surrounded by voices that shape him in opposite directions. His father, Milutin, towers in the family home, not with height but with stern sermons and exacting rules. As an Orthodox priest, Milutin expects his son to join the clergy, to wear the robes and learn the rhythms of liturgy. You can almost hear him intoning verses at the table, the deep voice filling the small wooden room. For you, it would feel like being constantly grounded by scripture, even when you just wanted to play with gears and bugs. But across from him sits Georgina, called Juka, Tesla's mother. She cannot read, but her hands are never still. She invents looms, improves kitchen tools, and memorizes whole epic poems, reciting them as though language were another craft. Nikola watches her weave, fascinated by the mechanical precision of her fingers. He will later claim that any talent for invention came directly from her. Historians still argue whether his mother's role in shaping him has been undervalued, overshadowed by his father's formal education. The truth likely lies somewhere in the weaving of both parents, one demanding discipline, the other supplying creativity. Tragedy enters early. Tesla's older brother, Dane, dies in a riding accident when Nikola is 5. The family never recovers. Milutin pours harsher expectations onto his surviving son, while Georgina clings even tighter. For Nikola, the loss cuts deep. He begins to sense that every success, every invention, must somehow make up for a missing sibling. It's a weight you feel even as you drift along beside him, the shadows of grief pressing against a boy's thin shoulders. The household is full of contradictions. His father maintains a large library, Greek classics, philosophy, scientific texts, and forbids Nikola from staying up too late. Of course, the boy sneaks candles anyway. You imagine the flicker of flame on his face as he pores over thick tomes, eyelids heavy but mind alert. He devours stories of scientists, inventors, explorers. Sometimes he mutters aloud, arguing with long-dead authors. You, hovering near the window, almost expect the books to argue back. Here's a quirky detail. Tesla develops a phobia of pearls. He cannot bear the sight of them, refuses to speak to women wearing pearl earrings. Even as a child, shiny white spheres make his stomach churn. No one knows why. Historians still argue whether it was a true phobia or an eccentric flourish later exaggerated by biographers. Either way, you picture him at family gatherings, eyes darting away whenever Aunt Milena enters adorned in jewelry, desperately trying not to gag into his soup. He is also obsessed with numbers, particularly divisible by 3. He paces his steps, repeats tasks in sets of 3, washes hands compulsively until rituals feel complete. Modern psychologists would diagnose obsessive-compulsive traits, but in the 1800s people simply called him peculiar. You trail him through the garden at dusk, watching him step carefully, 1, 2, 3, then begin again. The rhythm calms him, though it would drive you bananas if you tried to match it. Tesla's imagination intensifies with grief and expectation. He tells neighbors he sees glowing images when he hears ordinary words. If someone says bird, a bird flashes before him in crisp detail. It frightens him, but it also gives him a tool. He can mentally construct devices in perfect form, rotate them, test them, without touching a single piece of metal. This is not play acting. It's how he will later invent, for avoiding the need for endless prototypes. Mainstream accounts confirm his unusual visualization skills, though skeptics suggest exaggeration. Still, imagine designing a whole machine in your head, bolts and all, while you're supposed to be pulling weeds in the garden. His father's career path looms over him. You will be a priest, Milutin insists, perhaps to honor the memory of Dane. But Nikola squirms, not built for robes or sermons. He longs to chase lightning, not scripture. Late at night, you sense him whispering to the rafters, promising himself he'll escape. He dreams of faraway cities, Vienna, Paris, even America. Though at this age they're just glowing names in dusty books. The grief lingers. Sometimes Tesla claims to see his brother in visions, glowing still astride the doomed horse. Was it trauma? Hallucination? Historians still argue whether these visions shaped Tesla's later belief that thoughts, energies, even souls could persist beyond the body. To him, nothing was fully gone. Everything vibrated somewhere, waiting to be tapped. Meanwhile, Georgina teaches him practical tinkering. She shows him how to braid ropes, how to fashion household tools. When a pot breaks, she fashions a clamp from scraps. Nikola watches, noting how invention isn't always about glory, but about keeping soup from spilling. He later adapts this philosophy. Grand dreams, yes, but also clever fixes for everyday life. You think of how many broken IKEA chairs you've abandoned that might have been saved by just a scrap of Tesla's ingenuity. Despite the tension at home, Nikola finds solace in the rhythms of rural life. He roams fields, listens to insects, sketches wheels in dust. He experiments with frogs' legs, observing how a small current of static can twitch them into motion. It's a creepy little discovery, but also a stepping stone toward understanding electricity. You picture him grinning while his sisters shriek and run from the wriggling amphibians. His health remains fragile, but he clings to books, experiments, rituals. When fevers come, he drifts in and out of consciousness, reciting poetry he's memorized. Once, he astonishes his father by quoting entire pages of German literature while sweating through a fever. The human brain on the brink, yet still filing away lines like a librarian. As the years pass, he feels the tug of destiny more sharply. His father's sermons, his mother's crafts, his brother's shadow, they form a triangle of pressure around him. He wanders the yard at twilight, bare feet in cool grass, eyes tilted towards stars. Somewhere above, he's convinced, lies the secret pattern linking everything. Storms, rivers, machines, even grief. If he can just listen closely enough, maybe he can turn that invisible hum into light. And so the boy sharpens into the adolescent inventor, restless, haunted, and already half obsessed. You glance at him once more, hair falling over his eyes as he mutters equations in the dark, and you realize childhood is nearly over. The next step will be study, universities, and all the turbulence of ambition colliding with structure. But for now, the house is quiet except for the ticking of a handmade clock his mother repaired, a reminder that invention and survival are already braided together in this family. You slip with Tesla into the world of structured learning, though structured is a generous term. His father finally relents on the priesthood path, agreeing that Nikola might pursue technical studies instead. You imagine Milutin's sigh as he closes a leather-bound book, muttering that perhaps science is just another form of worship of the invisible. For you, it's an early relief. No sermons, no cassock fittings, just a young man chasing sparks and diagrams. In 1875, Tesla enrolls at the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz. The campus smells of chalk and ink. The corridors echo with the scrape of boots and the clatter of drafting tools. You walk beside him as he carries heavy textbooks that seem almost bigger than his wiry frame. Professors drone at the front of lecture halls, their voices bouncing off vaulted ceilings. But unlike many students slouched at their desks, Tesla sits bolt upright, eyes wide, drinking in every word. At first he dazzles. He works obsessively, often from 3 in the morning until 11 at night. His professors are impressed, some even a little unnerved. He aces mathematics, solves complex problems without scribbling notes, and delights in showing off his photographic memory. He can recite entire volumes verbatim. Mainstream history records how he finished a year's worth of courses in just a few months, which sounds like the academic equivalent of binge-watching an entire TV series in a single night. But there's a darker rhythm to this brilliance. Tesla pushes his body too hard. He skips meals, barely sleeps, and seems to thrive on nervous energy alone. You watch him pace his tiny student room, muttering equations, eyes burning. He begins to hallucinate more often, flashing visions of machines dancing in the air above his bed. Historians still argue whether this was simply exhaustion, a neurological condition, or some strange overlap of both. Whatever the cause, you're left wondering how much coffee it would take to keep up with him. Not that you'd survive more than a week on his schedule. There's a quirky episode involving billiards. Tesla, who rarely indulges in games, once storms into a tavern after days of study. He sits at the table, challenges local players, and proceeds to clear the board with unnerving precision. He claims he can calculate every angle in his head. People cheer, but Tesla soon leaves, uninterested in leisure. His classmates joke that he's allergic to fun. You watch him stalk away, chalk dust still clinging to his cuffs, as if playtime were just another experiment. By his second year, tensions mount. One professor mocks his ideas about using alternating current for motors. Direct current is the established way, the professor insists, wagging a chalk-stained finger. Tesla, young and stubborn, argues back. The clash becomes a small legend in Graz, the wiry student declaring he will build a motor without commutators, powered by alternating currents. Impossible, the professor scoffs. Historians still argue about whether this exchange truly happened, or whether Tesla embroidered the tale later to highlight his early foresight. Either way, the seed of obsession is planted. Financial trouble shadows him. His family cannot always send money, and Tesla struggles to afford rent and books. He racks up debts at local cafes, where he nurses a single cup of coffee for hours, scribbling equations on napkins. The cafe owners grumble, but tolerate him because his intensity is entertaining. You imagine sitting nearby, pretending to read while secretly watching him sketch diagrams of motors, looking as if he's conversing with invisible colleagues floating over his shoulder. The pressure grows unbearable. He gambles, loses money, then wins it back, then loses again. Nights disappear into smoky rooms, dice clattering, cards slapping on tables. Tesla later admits the habit nearly ruined him. He once gambled away his tuition money entirely, only to claw it back in a fit of desperate winning streaks. Quirky? Yes. Sustainable? Not at all. You think of your own budget slips, overspending on takeout maybe, but this is tuition we're talking about. Eventually, the collapse comes. Tesla fails to graduate. Records show he never officially received a degree from Graz. Instead, he drifts, letters unanswered, professors disappointed, family worried. He writes home, embarrassed, insisting he is still working on grand ideas. His father pleads with him to return, to steady himself. But Tesla resists, convinced that discovery waits just beyond exhaustion. In 1879, his father dies. Nikola, shattered, returns briefly to Croatia, thin, pale, nearly unrecognizable to neighbors. He is said to collapse in grief, spending weeks in bed. The local doctor fears he will not recover. But eventually, slowly, he pulls himself up, fueled by the thought that invention must continue. Historians still argue whether this period of collapse hardened Tesla into the obsessive man he later became, or whether it nearly broke him for good. Yet through the gloom his talents glimmer. He works briefly in Maribor as a draftsman, then wanders to Prague for studies he never quite formalizes. At each stop he leaves behind half-finished sketches, debts, rumors of brilliance. He's like a comet streaking across Europe, dazzling, then fading, then reappearing in another city. You, trailing behind, barely manage to keep pace. In Graz, in Prague, in smoky taverns and lonely dorm rooms, the same pattern repeats, flashes of genius followed by collapse. But through it all, Tesla clings to one burning image, the alternating current motor. He sees it in his mind as clearly as if it already existed, coils spinning, currents humming, energy pulsing smoothly. He will not let the vision go. So as he trudges across European streets, coat fraying, eyes alight, you sense the narrative sharpening. Childhood curiosity has transformed into a dangerous obsession. He's still penniless, still haunted, still fragile. Yet beneath the exhaustion lies a conviction that will one day change the world's entire electrical system. For now, though, he's just another young man wandering Europe, pockets empty, brain overcrowded, heart beating towards storms he cannot yet command. You trail Tesla into Budapest, where the Danube glitters under hazy sunlight, trams rattle along cobbled streets, and horse-drawn carriages weave through the bustle of a growing city. He arrives in early 1880s Europe at a low point, health failing, studies unfinished, and the loss of his father still fresh. He collapses with a nervous breakdown soon after, lying bedridden for months. His body shakes, his senses turn unbearable. He claims the ticking of a watch in another room is like cannon fire. You, hovering nearby, wince at the thought of trying to nap while hearing the dust motes settle like thunder. Recovery comes slowly. Friends encourage him to stroll through city parks, where the soft sway of trees and river breezes soothe him. And here in one of these walks near the Danube, something extraordinary happens. One evening, while reciting a passage from Goethe's Faust, Tesla suddenly sees the image of his alternating current motor blazed in his mind, not as a hazy dream, but as a complete design. He grabs a stick, draws diagrams in the sand, explaining to his bewildered companion how the motor would run smoothly on alternating current. No sparking commutators, no constant repairs. Historians still argue whether this vision in the park was a true epiphany or a polished anecdote Tesla repeated for drama. But in this moment, you feel goosebumps. The dream that will define his life now has form. He begins working as a draftsman at the Central Telegraph Office in Budapest. The building smells of ink, hot metal, and sweat from long hours. Tesla, gaunt but recovering, sketches plans for improved telephone systems and electrical equipment. Mainstream accounts note that he helped improve the city's telephone exchange, making it more reliable. But in his private notebooks, he fills page after page with swirling coils, trying to capture the motor design that still burns in his imagination. Quirky moments brighten his routine. Tesla becomes obsessed with walking for health. He insists on covering several miles each day, striding through Budapest boulevards with his long coat flapping like a cape. He claims that the rhythm of walking helps him solve equations in his head. Once he startles a friend by suddenly stopping mid-stride, eyes distant, muttering numbers, before resuming as though nothing happened. You picture pedestrians detouring around him, whispering that the tall, strange man is either a genius or mad, or possibly both. His health improves with this rhythm, but the visions don't leave him. At times he feels overwhelmed, as though sparks of light burst from ordinary words. A colleague recalls Tesla predicting that one day voices and images would travel wirelessly across continents. People laugh, patting him on the back. Nice fantasy, Nikola. Historians still argue whether Tesla really articulated such predictions that early, but you feel the irony. Standing in Budapest in the 1880s, he was dreaming of your smartphone notifications buzzing today. Despite his brilliance, Tesla's career in Budapest remains modest. His salary barely covers his meals. He sketches ideas on scraps of paper, but investors remain elusive. He longs for bigger laboratories, for patrons who can see what he sees. Still, each evening he walks beside the Danube, murmuring equations, sometimes tapping lampposts as though testing their readiness for the future. You drift beside him one night as a storm rolls across the city. Lightning forks above, reflecting in the river, and Tesla pauses under a bridge. His lips move. He's promising himself that one day he will command lightning, not in the wild, chaotic way nature does, but in orderly, humming circuits that can light entire cities. You shiver, partly from the night air, partly from the intensity radiating off him. A quirky detail. Tesla develops a reputation for being impeccably dressed, even while broke. He polishes his shoes until they gleam, presses his cuffs, and combs his hair neatly. He believes appearances matter in persuading patrons. The irony is that his pocket might hold only enough coins for bread, yet he walks into offices looking like he just stepped out of a gentleman's club. People notice. They may doubt his claims, but they respect his polish. You think of how many job interviews could have gone differently if you had just borrowed a little of Tesla's shine. Still, opportunities in Budapest are limited. His AC motor remains a dream without funding. He yearns for Paris, where the Continental Edison company is rumored to need skilled engineers. Friends whisper about opportunities there, better pay, better laboratories, maybe even patrons who can stomach his eccentricities. Tesla listens, eyes narrowing, already calculating the journey. The Danube drifts past, silent and dark. Tesla gazes across, already imagining the leap westward. The lights of Budapest flicker behind him, but in his mind, larger cities blaze with possibility. You sense it. This chapter is closing. The man who once nearly broke under illness has walked himself back into strength, carrying with him a motor that still only exists in his head, and a burning conviction that it can change the world. The city quiets, his footsteps echoing down an empty street, and you follow as he begins packing his meager belongings. A few books, some sketches, polished shoes. No fortune, no investors, just the stubborn belief that the dream sparked in a riverside park will one day power the future. Paris, in the 1880s, greets you with a haze of coal smoke, the clang of carriage wheels and the ceaseless chatter of cafes. Tesla arrives thin and determined, his coat brushed neat, his shoes polished, his pockets nearly empty. You follow him through boulevards glowing with gas lamps as he searches for the one place where his talents might finally meet opportunity. That place turns out to be the Continental Edison Company, the European arm of Thomas Edison's empire. Here, Tesla finds work as an electrical engineer. The workshop hums with activity, sparks flying, gears clattering, the smell of hot metal mixing with oil. Tesla, with his sharp memory and obsessive eye, quickly impresses his supervisors. He's handed broken dynamos, sputtering machines, tangled wiring, jobs other engineers grumble about, and he repairs them swiftly, often redesigning them in the process. Mainstream accounts confirm that within months, Tesla was already a standout, known for solving problems no one else dared touch. But while he labours, his mind wanders. The AC motor still glows in his imagination, turning endlessly without sparks or commutators. He sketches it on scraps, dreams of it while listening to French voices echoing through the workshop. At times he talks aloud, explaining to no one in particular how alternating current could run vast networks more efficiently than Edison's direct current. Colleagues chuckle, shaking their heads. One mutters, "That tall Serb is either a genius or lunatic." You can't help but notice how often that phrase seems to follow him from city to city. Tesla also experiences Paris in quirky ways. He adores the opera, often attending performances dressed immaculately, though he barely has enough coins for dinner. He sits in the upper balconies, listening with rapture, insisting the rhythms of music feed his calculations. Once, he startles companions by comparing the crescendos of an aria to the oscillations of alternating current. You imagine the polite applause of Parisians below, oblivious that the tall, intense man upstairs is mentally converting Verdi into equations. Historians still argue whether Tesla's time in Paris was as influential as he later suggested. Some accounts paint it as mere apprenticeship, others as the fertile ground where he refined his vision of alternating current. Either way, you watch him flourish. He's healthier than in Budapest, steadier, though his quirks never fade. He continues his long walks, pacing Parisian boulevards at night, coat flapping, mind racing faster than his steps. There's a fringe tidbit worth savouring. Tesla, ever the eccentric, begins to believe he can transmit energy through the Earth itself. He sketches crude diagrams of waves pulsing through the ground, carrying power invisibly. He murmurs to colleagues about a future where lamps glow without wires, where machines hum powered by the very air. Most dismiss him with smiles, but you, drifting close, sense the conviction behind his far-off gaze. By 1883, he's sent to Strasbourg on assignment to repair a faulty lighting system in a new railway station. The vast hall smells of sawdust and varnish, echoing with footsteps. While there, Tesla builds his first working model of an induction motor, cobbled together in secret with spare parts. He tests it quietly, watching the rotor spin smoothly under alternating current. His heart pounds, proof at last that his vision is real. Yet the promised reward from his employers never arrives. Investors nod politely, then turn away. The motor, for now, remains just an odd curiosity hidden in a station workshop. Still, the seed grows. Tesla knows he cannot remain in Europe. He dreams of America, the land where Edison himself reigns. Friends warn him, Edison is no friend to alternating current. But Tesla shrugs, convinced that if anyone could appreciate his brilliance, it must be the Wizard of Menlo Park. Besides, Europe feels too small for his ambitions now. He yearns for laboratories larger than imagination, for a stage where his ideas might power entire cities. A quirky aside, Tesla's health continues to puzzle those around him. He refuses coffee or tea, fearing overstimulation, but survives on odd diets. At times he eats only bread and milk, convinced it keeps his mind clear. Other times he binges on late-night meals, unable to resist once his calculations exhaust him. Historians still argue whether these habits were rooted in true health theories, or just another layer of his eccentric personality. You picture him sitting in a Paris cafe, ordering warm milk, while everyone else downs brandy, muttering equations into the foam. As the 1880s tick onward, Tesla polishes his English, preparing for the Atlantic leap. He studies dictionaries, recites passages aloud, determined to master the language before setting foot in New York. He practices handshakes, imagines introductions, and rehearses how he will explain his motor to Edison himself. You almost laugh, like a student prepping for a job interview that could alter the entire history of electricity. One spring evening, he stands on a Parisian bridge, gazing at the Seine. Gas lamps shimmer on the water, the air smells of rain, and Tesla whispers that he is ready. The river glides on indifferent, but you sense the moment crystallizing. He has fixed dynamos, dazzled colleagues, built his first motor in secret. Now he will chase the bigger dream, across an ocean that promises fortune or ruin. So he packs once again. A few letters of recommendation, some sketches, clothes folded neatly, shoes polished to a gleam. He boards a ship bound for New York in 1884, penniless but filled with visions. You follow him up the gangway, the city of Paris receding behind, the Atlantic yawning ahead. Somewhere across that restless water waits Edison, opportunity, and the beginning of a rivalry that will shape the current of history itself. The ocean tosses beneath you as the ship groans westward. Tesla, tall and gaunt, clutches his modest luggage, some letters of introduction, a few sketches, barely a change of clothes. He has no fortune, only a head filled with motors and circuits, and a stubborn belief that the new world will open its doors. You imagine the salty spray on his face, the damp wind tugging his coat, the mix of seasickness and excitement. You, however, would probably be lying below deck groaning into a bucket. The voyage is not smooth. At one point, Tesla claims his ticket and possessions are stolen, leaving him nearly penniless before even reaching New York. He scrapes by helping fellow passengers, arriving in America with only a few cents in his pocket. Mainstream accounts confirm he landed in 1884 with 4 pennies, a letter of recommendation, and a head full of dreams. Historians still argue whether he exaggerated the theft to dramatize his entrance, but either way, the image sticks. Nikola Tesla, genius to be, wandering the streets of New York with lint in his pockets. New York is a beast compared to Paris or Budapest. Steam whistles shriek, elevated trains rattle overhead, horses clop through crowded avenues. The air smells of coal, sweat, and ambition. You trail Tesla as he cranes his neck at skyscrapers still under construction, astonished at their scale. The city hums with energy, though ironically not the kind of alternating energy he envisions. His letter of recommendation eventually lands him at the office of Thomas Edison. Imagine the contrast. Edison, stocky, blunt, practical, the wizard of direct current, always tinkering with physical prototypes, and Tesla, tall, soft-spoken, dreaming in alternating currents, testing machines entirely in his head. Their meeting is a collision of 2 worlds. According to law, Tesla presents his ideas and Edison responds with laughter, calling them splendid but utterly impractical. Yet he hires him anyway, impressed by the young man's skills in repairing complex machines. So Tesla begins work at Edison Machine Works. The workshop smells of grease and ozone, wires snaking across the floor, workers hammering at dynamos. Tesla proves invaluable, repairing machines others cannot, sometimes working through the night without complaint. Colleagues marvel at his endurance, though you suspect his insomnia helps. He even redesigns some of Edison's generators, making them more efficient. Edison notices, but he is wary. The young immigrant is brilliant, yes, but also unsettling in his intensity. Then comes the famous quarrel. Edison allegedly promises Tesla a bonus, some say $50,000, if he can improve Edison's direct current generators. Tesla does so, only to be told later it was a joke. "You don't understand our American humor," Edison quips. Tesla, offended and perhaps humiliated, resigns. Historians still argue whether the story is true or embroidered, but the fallout is undeniable. Tesla leaves Edison's side, severing ties with the man who could have been his greatest patron. Suddenly, Tesla is unemployed in New York. He takes odd jobs, digging ditches for $2 a day, surveying, even wiring buildings by hand. Imagine the inventor of the AC motor trudging through mud with a shovel, blistered hands, coat stained. He later admits this period nearly broke him. You, standing nearby, might wonder if this is where most dreams end, in exhaustion and debt, not glory. But Tesla perseveres. His luck shifts when he encounters investors who are intrigued by his AC motor designs. He explains his vision with calm precision, sketching elegant diagrams. Unlike Edison, they listen. A small laboratory is rented for him in Manhattan, a space buzzing with possibility. At last, Tesla has room to build. Quirky details sprinkle these early New York days. Tesla insists on feeding pigeons in city parks, claiming they bring him peace. He becomes fixated on cleanliness, scrubbing his hands constantly, horrified by germs in the crowded metropolis. He also refuses to shake hands if he senses a person's hygiene is questionable. You imagine him tiptoeing through muddy streets, desperately avoiding puddles, while New Yorkers barge past unfazed. In his small lab, Tesla constructs his alternating current motor in physical form at last. When it hums to life, spinning smoothly without sparks, he beams. This is the moment. The dream from Budapest, the sketches in Paris, now embodied in a working machine. Historians agree that Tesla patented this motor in 1888, a breakthrough that would define his career. The rivalry with Edison looms larger. Edison, the champion of direct current, rails against alternating current as dangerous. Tesla, meanwhile, believes AC will carry electricity across great distances cheaply and efficiently. The stage is set for a war, not with fists but with wires, demonstrations, and public opinion. You lean closer, sensing the tension sparking in the air like static on a wool sweater. For now, though, Tesla stands in his modest workshop, hands still, eyes gleaming, as the motor hums steadily. Outside, New York bustles, unaware that in this cramped space, a revolution is quietly turning. He has crossed an ocean, lost his job, shoveled ditches, and nearly collapsed under poverty. But the current has shifted. The motor is alive, the dream is real, and the currents of history are about to collide. The motor hums steadily in your ears as Tesla steps away from the workbench, the faint vibration echoing in his fingertips. After years of sketches in sand, nights pacing boulevards, and humiliations under Edison, the alternating current motor exists. You can almost hear him whisper, "At last." But outside the lab, the world doesn't notice, at least not yet. New York in the late 1880s is hungry for spectacle, and Tesla is about to deliver. He patents his motor and other AC systems in 1888, presenting them before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. Picture him standing tall, speaking softly but with conviction, diagrams glowing under lamplight as he explains how alternating current can transmit power efficiently across long distances. Engineers in the audience lean forward, intrigued. Some nod, some frown, and a few whisper doubts. Historians still argue whether the applause afterward was polite or enthusiastic, but the spark has caught. Investors soon circle. One of them, Charles Peck, recognizes Tesla's brilliance and arranges funding. A new laboratory is secured on South Fifth Avenue. Here Tesla thrives, surrounded by coils, wires, humming machines. The space smells of ozone and varnish, a metallic perfume that seems to cling to his clothes. He demonstrates his motor tirelessly, spinning copper rotors, lighting lamps, insisting this is the future. You picture him beaming like a stage magician, though his trick is entirely real. Yet the lab is also a playground for Tesla's eccentricities. He works late into the night, sometimes forgetting to eat. His assistants note his peculiar rituals. He cleans equipment obsessively, lines up tools with unnerving precision, and demands silence while he calculates aloud. Quirky detail? He refuses to touch hair or round objects, claiming they repel him. Once, an assistant hands him a polished ball bearing, and Tesla recoils as if stung by a bee. The man who would one day command lightning cannot bear the feel of a pearl. Amid these quirks, a glimmer of partnership arrives. Enter George Westinghouse, the Pittsburgh industrialist who sees in Tesla's patents the foundation for a revolution. Westinghouse invites Tesla to Pittsburgh, offering a handsome deal, royalties on every horsepower of alternating current produced. For a moment, Tesla seems on the verge of fortune. He walks the steel city streets, watching furnaces roar and sparks fly, dreaming of his motors powering not just workshops but entire towns. Still, challenges pile up. Engineers struggle to scale his motor design for industrial use. Tesla, impatient, sketches improvements, arguing with workers, insisting the vision is sound. Historians still argue whether Tesla's impractical perfectionism slowed progress, or whether Westinghouse's engineers simply lacked his clarity. Either way, the dream stumbles forward, uneven but persistent. Back in New York, Tesla becomes a figure of fascination. Journalists describe him as gaunt, intense, eyes glowing with ideas. He gives demonstrations of electrical marvels that border on theatre. One evening, he passes high-frequency currents through his own body, lighting lamps with his bare hands while reporters gape. "The Wizard of Electricity," one headline proclaims. You imagine the gasps in the audience, though you, trailing nearby, might whisper, "Kids, don't try this at home." Tesla's lectures are dazzling. In St. Louis, he projects sparks across the stage, filling the air with the smell of ozone. He waves glowing tubes like futuristic wands, proclaiming that one day wireless lighting will illuminate cities. Some attendees believe him, others dismiss it as showmanship. But everyone leaves remembering his tall silhouette framed in lightning. There are lighter quirks too. Tesla insists on eating dinner at Delmonico's, one of New York's finest restaurants, though he lives modestly elsewhere. He becomes friends with waiters, giving precise instructions about his meals. He calculates the exact number of chewing motions required for proper digestion, usually multiples of 3. You try not to laugh watching him count bites silently, while other patrons gossip over oysters and champagne. Yet beneath the eccentricity lies steel. He refuses to compromise his belief that AC will prevail. Edison, meanwhile, fights back, launching smear campaigns about the dangers of alternating current. Tesla knows the war has begun, though he prefers to let his machines, not his words, make the case. The lab fills with humming coils, glowing tubes, sparks snapping in the dark. He is not merely tinkering, he is rehearsing for the stage of history. Quirky tidbit: Tesla keeps pet pigeons even now, walking to parks to feed them by hand. He claims their company soothes him, balancing the intensity of his work. Neighbors chuckle at the sight of the tall inventor scattering crumbs in his immaculate suit, pigeons perched on his arms like he's some eccentric saint of feathers and circuits. By 1888, Tesla is no longer just a struggling immigrant. He is an inventor with patents, a partner in Westinghouse, and a showman who dazzles crowds. Yet money remains precarious, royalties uncertain, and Edison's shadow looms. Still, in this moment, as his AC motor spins confidently, you sense the tide turning. The motor is no longer a dream, it is a weapon in the looming war of currents. The lab quiets for the night. Tesla alone adjusts his cuffs, straightens tools into perfect rows, and pauses by the motor. Its steady hum fills the room like a lullaby of progress. He smiles faintly, whispers something only he hears, and steps out into the gaslit street. Above, the New York sky is dark, but you know it won't be for long. The hum of Tesla's lab lingers in your ears, but outside a storm of rivalry brews. The war of currents has begun. Edison on one side, champion of direct current, and Tesla allied with Westinghouse, carrying the banner of alternating current. You trail Tesla through crowded lecture halls, smoky boardrooms, and fairgrounds, where the battle plays out not just in patents, but in public stunts. Edison, unwilling to yield, begins a smear campaign. He warns the public that alternating current is dangerous, even deadly. Demonstrations are staged where animals are electrocuted with AC to prove the point. You wince, standing at the edge of the crowd as onlookers gasp, half horrified, half thrilled. Tesla, horrified himself, insists that the demonstrations are cruel distortions. Historians still argue whether Edison personally ordered these shows or whether overzealous employees carried them out, but the effect is the same. Fear spreads. Yet Tesla's confidence does not waver. He demonstrates AC's safety in his own eccentric way, allowing current to pass through his body and light lamps in his hands. Audiences gasp, then applaud. The tall inventor in his crisp suit seems immune to electricity itself. He explains calmly, voice steady, that alternating current can be controlled, transmitted safely, and used to power cities. You almost expect him to wink, but Tesla rarely breaks into casual charm. His humor is dry, quiet, and often unintentional. Quirky detail, Tesla begins using his body as a prop in these demonstrations, often standing in dramatic poses while sparks dance across coils. He looks like a wizard conjuring storms, though afterward he insists to reporters that it's all just science. You watch the crowd leave, whispering that they've seen something magical, while Tesla slips back to his lab to pace alone, counting steps by threes. The press eats up the rivalry. Newspapers splash headlines about the battle of the currents. Edison warns of death by electrocution. Tesla counters with visions of a glowing, electrified future. Meanwhile, Westinghouse backs him, installing AC systems in towns and factories. Slowly, the tide begins to shift. Businesses realize that AC can transmit power over long distances without massive losses, something DC simply cannot do. One particularly gruesome chapter unfolds when New York State decides to test the electric chair. AC is chosen for the execution, partly as a result of Edison's campaign to brand it as lethal. You hover near the press gallery as the first execution unfolds clumsily, horrifying witnesses. Reporters gleefully brand the method Westinghoused. Tesla, distressed, remarks that if they truly wanted a humane method, they should use his coil to make it instantaneous. Historians still argue whether Tesla's suggestion was sincere or sardonic, but either way, it's clear he hated seeing his work associated with death. Yet amid the ugly politics, victories emerge. In 1893, Tesla and Westinghouse win the contract to power the Chicago World's Fair with alternating current. Imagine the sight. Over 100,000 incandescent bulbs glowing across the fairgrounds, fountains sparkling with colored lights, the night transformed into a landscape of brilliance. You walk beside awestruck visitors as they gasp, their faces illuminated by electric glow. For many, it is the first time they've seen electric light, and it feels like stepping into the future. Tesla himself strolls the fairgrounds, quietly pleased, though he avoids grand speeches. His demonstrations inside the fair, however, are dazzling. He lights lamps wirelessly, sends sparks arcing across the stage, and calmly holds glowing tubes as if he were channeling the aurora itself. Newspapers dub him the Wizard of Electricity once more, and even Edison's supporters cannot deny the spectacle. Quirky aside, during one fair demonstration, Tesla allegedly shook hands with visitors only to immediately pull out a handkerchief and wipe carefully, muttering about germs. You imagine the bewildered faces of people just electrified by his show, now watching him disinfect his fingers like a fussy surgeon. Historians still argue whether Edison ever fully admitted defeat in this war, but by the mid-1890s, the outcome is clear. Alternating current will power the world. Tesla, once a penniless ditch digger, is now the co-architect of a new electrical era. The victory, however, is not sweetly secure. His royalties with Westinghouse grow complicated, financial pressures mount, and rivals circle. But for a moment, standing amid glowing lights at the Chicago Fair, Tesla looks out at a city illuminated by his dream. The hum of alternating current fills the air, brighter and steadier than any gas flame. You, drifting close, feel the thrill of victory too. For once, the eccentric genius seems to have turned the tide, not with bluster, but with the steady pulse of invisible currents. The fairgrounds quiet late at night, bulbs dimming one by one as visitors leave. Tesla lingers, coat collar turned against the breeze, eyes reflecting the glow of the last lamps. He whispers that the future has arrived, and for once, you believe him completely. The glow of the Chicago Fair still lingers in your eyes, but Tesla is already thinking ahead. The triumph of alternating current has given him fame, yet fame, like lightning, flickers and fades. What matters now is building the infrastructure to spread AC everywhere, and for that he leans heavily on his partnership with George Westinghouse. Westinghouse is practical, bullish, a man of business and steel. Tesla is ethereal, perfectionist, a man of visions and pigeons. Together they make an odd pair, but for a while it works. Westinghouse purchases Tesla's patents outright, then agrees to pay him royalties per horsepower of AC installed. If honored, this deal would have made Tesla one of the wealthiest men alive. You can almost see Tesla pacing his lab, dreaming of how those funds might support his experiments, new coils, grander towers, lightning machines. But reality intrudes. The panic of 1893 crashes markets, shaking Westinghouse's empire. Banks circle like sharks, demanding relief. In one of those moments that makes you rub your eyes, Tesla does the unthinkable. He tears up his royalty contract. He releases Westinghouse from the obligation, reportedly saying he would rather see his system spread than destroy his partner financially. Historians still argue whether Tesla literally ripped the contract before Westinghouse's eyes or simply renegotiated quietly, but either way, he sacrifices a fortune. Imagine giving up billions in future money just so your invention can live. If you tried that today, your accountant would faint. Quirky detail. Tesla remains utterly unconcerned with personal wealth. He buys fine suits, dines at Delmonico's, but beyond that, he doesn't seem to care. He lives in hotels, not houses, and pours whatever resources he has back into experiments. You picture him walking through New York with immaculate gloves and spotless shoes, yet his wallet holding only a few crumpled bills. The partnership's crown jewel soon rises, harnessing the power of Niagara Falls. Westinghouse wins the contract, and Tesla's alternating current designs are chosen to bring electricity from the roaring cataract to Buffalo, miles away. You follow Tesla to the edge of the falls, mist soaking his coat, the roar pounding in your ears. He gazes into the torrent, whispering that here lies endless power waiting to be tapped. For him, it is destiny fulfilled. The boy who once nearly drowned in a village river now commands one of the world's greatest torrents. Mainstream accounts celebrate this as one of the turning points of modern infrastructure. The station at Niagara, completed in the mid-1890s, proves that AC can transmit power long distances reliably. From that moment, the world's course is set. Alternating current grids spread across continents, humming into homes and factories. Tesla has changed history, yet his own pockets remain thin. The press continues to call him eccentric. Reporters describe him dining alone, feeding pigeons, demonstrating strange devices. In interviews, he hints at new wonders, wireless communication, global energy transmission, even death rays. Investors nod politely, then hesitate. The practical businessmen prefer steady profits to visions of beams shooting across oceans. You sense Tesla's frustration, pacing in his lab, muttering about short-sightedness. Historians still argue whether Tesla sabotaged himself by refusing to compromise, or whether the world simply wasn't ready for him. Either way, his partnership with Westinghouse drifts from golden promise to cautious distance. Westinghouse still respects him, but must focus on industry, while Tesla continues sketching impossible machines on napkins, chasing the next lightning dream. Quirky aside, Tesla begins to develop elaborate routines for eating. At restaurants, he demands 18 clean napkins to polish his utensils, glasses, and plates before each meal. Waiters roll their eyes but comply, partly because he tips generously when he can, partly because they don't want to upset the famous inventor. You, sitting at the next table, would probably try to sneak away before the ritual cleaning ended. Still, despite quirks, Tesla's star shines bright in this period. He lectures, demonstrates, dazzles. Audiences adore his lightning tricks, his glowing tubes, his calm explanations of phenomena that once seemed magical. Children point and whisper, "There goes the man who commands lightning." For a time, he embodies the modern wizard, standing at the intersection of science and spectacle. And yet the shadow of financial struggle never leaves. His sacrifice with Westinghouse, his disregard for money, his obsession with perfection, all combine to leave him vulnerable. Rivals eye his patents, businessmen hedge their bets, and Tesla begins to sense the precariousness of his fame. Still, he pushes forward, convinced that his greatest work lies ahead, not behind. As the decade wanes, you stand with him on the edge of Niagara, spray clinging to your hair, listening to the thunder. Tesla murmurs that the future will hum with invisible power, not just wires carrying electricity, but signals carried across the air, energy shared freely around the world. You glance at the falls, feel the ground tremble, and realize he has won one war, but a greater gamble awaits. The roar of Niagara fades, but Tesla's mind never rests on past victories. He walks the damp streets of New York at night, shoes clicking in threes, already dreaming of what lies beyond waterfalls and power stations. His gaze drifts not to lamps and motors anymore, but to the future, an invisible web that could connect the entire world. At the heart of these visions is wireless power. Tesla imagines great towers humming with energy, currents leaping invisibly through the air, lamps glowing without wires, ships crossing oceans guided by transmitted signals. He explains to anyone who will listen that Earth itself can conduct energy, like a giant conductor waiting to be tuned. Some nod in awe, others roll their eyes. Historians still argue whether Tesla's wireless dream was technically feasible or pure fantasy, but you can feel his conviction as he sketches towers rising against the skyline. In 1899, Tesla heads west to Colorado Springs, convinced the thinner air and isolation will give him room to experiment with wireless transmission. You follow him to the plains, where lightning forks nightly across the horizon. His laboratory, a wooden barn crowned with a spindly mast, looks unassuming from the outside. Step inside, though, and coils loom like monsters, wires snake across the floor, and copper balls gleam. The air smells of ozone, dry dust, and anticipation. Here Tesla unleashes lightning. He builds enormous coils that spit arcs tens of feet long, blue-white sparks snapping like whips. Locals watch from hillsides, whispering that the tall foreigner is summoning storms. He even claims to have generated artificial lightning bolts over 100 feet long. Mainstream historians confirm that Tesla created record-breaking discharges, though the precise length remains debated. Still, you'd probably duck behind a hay bale watching fireballs dance across the prairie. A quirky tidbit: during these experiments, Tesla once accidentally set the local power station on fire by overloading its circuits. The town plunged into darkness, and angry officials demanded answers. Tesla calmly apologized, promising it was all in the name of science. You imagine the poor mayor shaking his fist while Tesla quietly adjusted his notes, already planning the next experiment. It is here, in Colorado, that Tesla begins testing wireless signals. He places bulbs outside the lab that light without wires, powered by his coils. He insists this proves his vision. One day, entire cities will glow without a single cable strung between them. He even claims to detect mysterious signals, possibly from Mars, he suggests. Historians still argue whether Tesla truly believed he had heard extraterrestrial transmissions, or whether he misinterpreted atmospheric noise. Either way, the idea cements his reputation as both visionary and eccentric. Back in New York, he begins designing Wardenclyffe Tower, his grandest project yet. Imagine a colossal wooden tower rising nearly 200 feet, crowned with a gleaming copper dome. Tesla insists it will transmit power across the Atlantic, sending not only energy but also voice and images. To his mind, it will be the beating heart of a new age. Investors, dazzled by his confidence, provide funds. Among them is J.P. Morgan, whose cold business gaze contrasts sharply with Tesla's idealistic gleam. Yet Tesla's dream comes with flaws. He imagines free energy for all, but Morgan wants profit. "Where do we put the meter?" the banker allegedly asks. Tesla waves away the concern, insisting the benefits outweigh the business. Historians still argue whether this clash doomed Wardenclyffe before it even began, but you can sense the tension. A wizard of electricity versus the iron logic of capital. Through all this, Tesla maintains his peculiar routines. He refuses to sleep more than 2 hours at a time, convinced that short naps keep his mind sharper. He insists on walking exactly 8 miles each day, sometimes late into the night, coat flapping as he strides past startled pedestrians. At restaurants, he demands precise numbers of utensils, stacking them with mathematical symmetry before eating. You picture waiters sighing, already bracing for the tall inventor's eccentric checklist. Despite quirks, his lectures remain mesmerizing. In one, he lights phosphorescent bulbs that glow ghostly blue in his hands, telling audiences that the future will glow like this everywhere. No wires needed. People gasp, applaud, and whisper about miracles. You lean in close, half believing you've glimpsed a century ahead. But funding strains grow heavier. Wardenclyffe rises slowly, consuming money faster than results appear. Morgan grows impatient, newspapers grow skeptical, and rivals mock Tesla as a dreamer. Still, he walks the construction site with pride, tipping his hat to workers, explaining that soon the entire planet will hum with energy. You can feel his faith, unwavering even as cracks spread beneath the dream. For now, though, the story pulses with possibility. Tesla has won the war of currents, harnessed Niagara and lit up the Chicago Fair. Now he reaches for something grander, a future where power and communication span the globe without wires. You watch him stride away from his Colorado lab, sparks still fading in the dust, eyes already fixed on a tower that has yet to touch the sky. You stand with Tesla as Wardenclyffe Tower takes shape on Long Island, a strange wooden skeleton rising above the fields, topped with a great copper dome that gleams in the sunlight. Reporters arrive in droves, scribbling headlines about the mysterious inventor and his promise to beam energy across the ocean. Tesla, tall and elegant in his suit, tells them calmly that the tower will not only carry power, but also voices, music, even moving images. To the crowd, it sounds like science fiction. To you, it feels like the Wi-Fi dream centuries too early. Yet money is never his ally. J.P. Morgan, the powerful banker who funds the project, demands profits, meters, control. Tesla, ever the idealist, speaks instead of free energy for all, lamps glowing in remote villages, ships guided across seas by invisible signals. Morgan frowns. Historians still argue whether the clash was inevitable, but either way, the funding begins to wither. The tower stands unfinished, a monument to vision outrunning business. While the finances sour, Tesla continues to dazzle the public. In lecture halls, he conjures lightning from his coils, holds glowing tubes that light without wires, and calmly explains that it is all science, not sorcery. Children squeal, adults gasp, and reporters call him the wizard. Quirky detail, he invites his friend Mark Twain onto a mechanical oscillator in his lab, a vibrating platform. Twain laughs, until the vibrations force him to run straight to the restroom. Tesla records the episode with dry amusement, another odd footnote in his career of mingling science with spectacle. Eccentricities deepen. Tesla eats only at select hotels, demanding dozens of folded napkins to polish his utensils, and pacing his meals into neat multiples of 3. He walks miles each night through New York, feeding pigeons, sometimes claiming he loves one white pigeon as he would a person. Onlookers chuckle, but to Tesla, these rituals soothe a restless mind. Historians still argue whether Tesla failed because financiers betrayed him or because he refused compromise. What you see is a man unwilling to barter his principles. He will not cage his dream of a world where energy is as free as air, and so Wardenclyffe remains silent, the tower looming like a ghost of what might have been. Yet even as his finances crumble, the world hums with alternating current, cities glow with light, and his name is whispered wherever lamps flicker on. The paradox is sharp. Tesla has already changed the world, but he is convinced he has not gone far enough. Standing beneath the unfinished tower, coat flapping in the evening breeze, he murmurs that the real future is still to come. And for a heartbeat, you almost believe him. The unfinished tower at Wardenclyffe fades behind you, a skeleton on the horizon, but Tesla carries on as if the dream still hums inside his head. Investors may have walked away, banks may have closed their ledgers, yet he paces New York streets with his usual deliberate steps, still sketching inventions in his mind. He never loses the flair for public spectacle. In demonstrations, he reveals remote-controlled boats, miniature vessels gliding across water, guided by unseen signals. The crowd gasps, some insisting it must be magic or trickery. A few even mutter that Tesla is controlling the boat with his mind. Smiling faintly explains the reality. Radio waves, tuned circuits, invisible transmissions. Historians still argue whether audiences truly grasped what they saw, but what you witness is the birth of radio, years before Marconi would claim the laurels. Tesla's health begins to fray. His insomnia grows worse, his diet more restrictive, his obsession with cleanliness nearly unbearable. Quirky detail. He becomes convinced that pearls are abhorrent and refuses to speak to any woman wearing them. At fine restaurants, waiters learn to steer him away from diners draped in jewelry, lest he recoil mid-meal. You watch him counting every step, wiping every utensil, muttering calculations between bites. It is the routine of a man both brilliant and burdened. Despite his decline, flashes of genius keep surfacing. He sketches designs for bladeless turbines, imagines particle beam weapons to end all wars, and insists he can create a world system of wireless communication linking every continent. Newspapers print his claims, half in awe, half in ridicule. Historians still argue whether he truly believed each project was imminent, or whether they were dreams he clung to as money and time slipped away. Public fascination never fades. Children chase after him in hotel lobbies, whispering about the wizard who commands lightning. Reporters note his tall figure, immaculate suits, the flock of pigeons that follow him in parks. Friends worry he is alone, but Tesla insists solitude sharpens his mind. You, walking beside him, feel the quiet ache under his polished exterior. By the 1910s, Tesla spends more time in hotel rooms than in laboratories. He scribbles notes obsessively, feeding pigeons from his window, walking miles each evening no matter the weather. His former rivals, Edison, Westinghouse, continue in business while Tesla drifts further into eccentric isolation. Yet the world runs on his currents, a silent tribute he never seems to acknowledge. One evening, he stands at a window of the Waldorf Astoria, gazing out at a skyline blazing with electric light. The lamps, the trams, the humming wires, all bear his signature, though his name is absent from the ledgers. He sighs, strokes a pigeon perched on his arm, and murmurs that the world has taken his power but not his dream. You sense the melancholy and the stubborn hope woven together, as if he refuses to let go of the tower that never lived. The years drift like static fading from a coil, and Tesla grows older, though his stride along New York's avenues remains oddly measured, every step counted, every gesture precise. By the 1920s, he is less the celebrated wizard of electricity and more a curious figure haunting hotel lobbies, known to staff for his exacting habits and his endless fascination with pigeons. Mainstream accounts confirm that he spends countless hours feeding flocks in Bryant Park. One snowy afternoon, he singles out a pure white pigeon, declaring he loves her as he would a person. He tells friends she brings him comfort, that he understands her in ways no one else could. Quirky, yes, but also tender. This great inventor, who once dreamed of lighting the entire planet, now devotes his affection to a single bird. Financially, he is nearly destitute. He owes debts at hotels, often moving when bills pile too high. Some wealthy admirers quietly settle accounts for him, unwilling to see the genius reduced to eviction. Historians still argue whether Tesla's poverty was due entirely to bad luck and ruthless rivals, or to his refusal to compromise his ideals. What is clear is that he valued vision over money, and money eventually stopped valuing him back. Yet Tesla never stops announcing ideas. He claims to be working on a death beam, a particle weapon that could make nations invincible. Headlines trumpet the invention, though no prototype ever appears. Governments inquire cautiously, hoping to glimpse blueprints. Tesla, meanwhile, writes grand statements about world peace enforced by technology. You can't help but smirk at the irony. The man who once wanted free energy for all now proposes a superweapon to prevent wars. His eccentric routines deepen into ritual. He demands towels stacked in threes, insists on polishing his silverware before every meal, and will not occupy a hotel room unless the number is divisible by 3. He begins wearing gloves constantly, shunning handshakes. Waiters and bellboys whisper about him, half in amusement, half in pity. Yet he never loses his dignity. Even in threadbare suits, he stands tall, his accent crisp, his eyes alight when speaking of science. Occasionally he still lectures, and audiences are reminded of the old brilliance. He describes wireless communication, predicting handheld devices that could transmit voice and images across oceans. He imagines renewable energy sources, machines powered by nature itself. Some listeners chuckle, but others leave shaken, realizing he is describing futures that seem absurd now, but eerily possible later. Historians still argue whether Tesla foresaw mobile phones and the internet, or whether admirers retrofitted his musings, but the echoes feel uncanny. By the 1930s, Tesla lives mostly in hotels, the New Yorker among them, sustained by small pensions and occasional awards from foreign governments. He grows frail, yet still walks daily to feed his pigeons, still calculates step patterns in his mind, still jots strange notes on scraps of paper. The world outside roars into modernity, cars, radios, skyscrapers, all powered by the alternating current he gave it. But inside his rooms, Tesla paces quietly, a solitary figure humming with forgotten currents. Quirky aside, guests sometimes report hearing him talking softly to birds outside his window, cooing back in their rhythm. Others glimpse him scattering seed in the snow in his fine gloves, pigeons landing on his arms as though he were their chosen prophet. You watch him smile faintly in those moments, and you realize he has found companionship in wings when human partnerships failed. On January 7th, 1943, Tesla dies alone in his New Yorker hotel room at the age of 86. His belongings, boxes of notes, models, and countless half-finished ideas, are seized, sparking rumors of secret weapons and lost inventions. Historians still argue what truths lay hidden in those papers and what myths were spun afterward. What is certain is that his life closes quietly, without fortune, yet leaving behind a world forever altered. The lights of the city blazed that night as usual, humming on alternating current. In every lamp, every tram, every humming transformer, you hear the whisper of Tesla's dream, still alive even as the man who gave it shape drifts into silence.